And also,
Amen.
so there's a 70-year-old guy goes to the doctor for a checkup. The doctor says, I can't believe it. You're in perfect health. How old was your father when he died? So he says, who said my father is dead? My father is alive. He's healthy as a horse. He runs 5 miles a day. He competes in the Ironman marathon. He's in perfect health. So he says, really? So how old was his father when he died? He said, who said my grandfather is dead? My grandfather's 104 years old. He's also extremely healthy. And as a matter of fact, he's getting married next month. So the doctor says, really? He's 104 and he's getting married? Why would he want to get married at that age? He said he doesn't really want to get married. His mother is forcing him to get married. So we're coming to the month of Adar, Mishanichnas Adar, Marbim Besimcha. The famous energy of Adar is transformation, it's happiness. And then we have another interesting element this year, and that's the fact that Adar is a leap year, or as we call it, a Shnas Meuberes, a pregnant year, or a Iber in Yiddish. And my Baba, I used to harass her, Baba, are we going here? Are we going there? Are we doing this? Are we doing that? When I was a little girl, she would say, Adar, either or, Adar. So this year has a double energy. So I thought to myself, I want to share two interesting things. One, about Simcha, happiness, because that is the energy of Adar. And the second one about leap year. What exactly does it mean that it is a Shana Muveres, a pregnant year, a leap year, a Iber? And from a compilation of some sichas of the Rebbe, and also a magnificent mimer from the Alter Rebbe, a short, concise mimer. So the first thing we have to ask when it comes to happiness, how do you attain happiness? Are you born that way? Like my friend always says, I was born this way, what's your excuse? And we know that in the Declaration of Independence, very clearly states that it's the inalienable right of all man for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Notice it says happiness, not pleasure, because pleasure is not happiness and happiness is not pleasure. And do we pursue happiness as it says in the Declaration of Independence? So most people think of happiness as a destination. If only I could move out of my 2-bedroom apartment into a big house with my 12 children, I'll be happy. If only I could find a shidduch for my daughter, I'll be happy. I really will be happy. If only I would...
it'll happen.
Amen. If only I would acquire wealth, I could pay off my debt, and I could live beautifully, and then I'll be happy. If only my son would give me a little nachas in yeshiva, then I will be happy. If only, then I'll be happy. So we look as destination, as happiness, as the goal, the destination. That's what I'm aiming for. That's the end game. So in the shtetl, there was a guy called Yankel the warrior. He was worried about everything. He was always stressed out. He was always unhappy. He was always full of anxiety. One day, the chevra come into the Beis Midrash, and Yankel the warrior is sitting there relaxed, calm, serene. All he's missing is a pina colada. So they said, Yankel, you're not worried about anything? He says, no, I hired a professional warrior. You hired a professional warrior? Yes, how much are you paying him? $150,000 a year, and I have to tell you it's money well spent. Yankel bismashuga? $150,000 a year? You're going to go bankrupt. And where are you even going to get the money? Yankel says, That's going to be his first worry. Where are you going to get the money? So there's a magnificent mimer from the Alter Rebbe, from Maimorim HaKtsarim, and guess what it's called? Simcha, happiness. And let me give a brief overview what Maimorim HaKtsarim are very quickly. So the Alter Rebbe, as they say in Hasidic lingo, Far Petersburg und nach Petersburg. Before Yutas Kislev and after Yutas Kislev. So before Yutas Kislev, there was the Maimorim Ketsarim, very concise, short, brief, but very passionate and fiery. And after Yutas Kislev, the Alter Rebbe's Maimorim became very elaborate and very long. This particular mimer has like 12 to 13 lines. I made a copy, 12 to 13 lines. So the Alter Rebbe says something magnificent. He starts off by saying, Simcha hi shvelus hanefesh. First of all, if you want to be happy, you have to have humility. And then he says something I never heard before, which doesn't mean anything. I'm nicht from the Grace Talmidei Chacham is this. But the Alter Rebbe says, Ki kol davar v'davar, hein soimeach, hein chai, hein medaber. HaSimcha mudva, miteva. That every creature, every animal, every human being is created in a state of happiness. In other words, you're born happy. That's your real state, the way you are from the beginning of creation. So that's why when you look at a baby, the baby's screaming, you pick up the baby in a second, gurgling, giggling, laughing. Of course, needs to be diapered, needs to be fed, but b'derech klal, look at any baby, always happy, because we are born in a state of happiness. So what happens to us? So animals don't have intellect, don't have bechiras chafsh, it's free choice, so they remain happy. Even though scientists now say that monkeys and elephants actually feel grief. And of course, pain, all animals feel pain. So they're always happy. But what happens to us? What happens to us? So in the beginning, Kol Zman, the Alter Rebbe writes, we are connected to the Rebbe. We look at our lives that we are emissaries and shluchim of the Rebbe in this world. We have a mission. We have a purpose. We have a destination. The happiness, the energy of the Rebbe continues to flow, and we feel happy, inner contentment, because we're aligned with the Rebbe. We're aligned with our purpose and mission on this earth. But then what happens? The ego comes into play. The ego says to the person, we have to change the narrative here. My life is a disappointment. This is not what I wanted for myself. I never envisioned that my shlichus would be like this. I'm already in my 50s. This is my relationships in my life. This is what I wanted. And what happens? You place a barrier between yourself and the Rebbe. You cut off the divine stream, and now you're unhappy. I'm unhappy. I am so unhappy. I don't know why. So what do? You pursue happiness. But you don't realize you can't pursue happiness. If you want to get back happiness at the Alter Rebbe, you have to go back and reconnect and actually take a step back. The more you chase happiness, the more it's going to run away from you. You have to be makabel happiness. You can't chase happiness. Rabbi Sir Jonathan Sachs, everybody knows him, Olav Shalom. He tells a story that it was his first yechidus by the Rebbe. He was an undergraduate student, and if you remember his story, he told it at the Shluchim convention one year. He came to the Rebbe and he said he's going into academia. And the Rebbe told him, no, you're becoming a rabbi. Tells the story. So he says that while he's waiting for Yechidus, an Elter Chassid sits himself down near him and starts chatting. And he says, I want to tell you a story, Rabbi Sachs. A Yidel, a Chassid, wrote a letter to the Rebbe. He writes a letter to the Rebbe like this: I am so unhappy, Rebbe. I am deeply depressed. Ich daven, and I find no comfort. I do mitzvahs, but I don't feel anything. I find it so hard to carry on. And he writes this letter to the Rebbe. He gets an answer. The envelope comes out. He looks both sides. There's nothing in the answer. The Rebbe didn't write him anything. But then he looks closer and he sees wherever he wrote, I'm unhappy, I'm depressed, ich daven and I get no response. I have no comfort in my life. The Rebbe circled every I. What was the Rebbe telling him? The Rebbe was telling him that your preoccupation with yourself, with your yesh, with your ego, is the source and the root of your unhappiness. You're so consumed with, I am not getting what I need. I'm not where I want to be. And you cut yourself off from Simcha. But once you reconnect and you realize again, you're a conduit of the Eibishter, you're a shlucha of the Eibishter. You're here for a reason, a purpose, and you get yourself back on that trajectory, you begin to feel that inner happiness and inner contentment. And the Alter Rebbe writes that even when you're going through pain, sorrow, trauma, challenges, darkness, even then, you will have the inner contentment will get you through it. You'll feel pain. It's not you never feel pain, says the Alter Rebbe. You feel pain, you feel unhappiness, you feel sorrow. But you have that inner joy that gets you through it because you remain connected to the Meshaleach, to the one who sent you to this world. That's the secret to happiness. But I want to add something. The Alter Rebbe writes very clearly. This is not a one-time, hello, we'll do the yoga together, we'll meditate, and we'll be misameach. It's a lifetime avodah, the Alter Rebbe writes. Every day you have to realign yourself. Because every morning that Eibishter resends down that flow of Simcha when you wake up in the morning. That's why people wake up refreshed, usually. So it's a lifetime avodah to keep yourself on track. I want to go back to Rabbi Sachs. Tells a very, very interesting insight. He said his father passed away. He was very unhappy, very depressed. So he decided he's going to write a book, and he called it Celebrating Life. And it pulled him out of his Chodesh, his depression. And hundreds of Holocaust survivors started to read this book, and they found comfort in the fact that you can rise up even at times when you fall so low. And one thing he writes in the book, I don't know if you ever heard of Robert Begnini. He wrote movies. He's Italian. He wrote something, a humorous movie about the Holocaust called Life is Beautiful. Very, very funny. He brought humor to the whole thing, healing humor, not chas v'shalom mockery. So Rabbi Sachs writes this in his book, that humor and happiness, though it didn't save our lives in the concentration camps, it at least kept us sane. So he meets a Holocaust survivor at one of his events, and the Holocaust survivor says, Rabbi Sachs, with all due respect, humor and happiness in the concentration camp kept us alive, not only sane. Haraya, he tells Rabbi Sachs, the camp situation in Auschwitz was so horrific. The atrocities was unfathomable. So I and my friend, who were both in the same barrack, we made up a hachlata. Every day, at the end of the day, each and every one of us had to tell the other person a happy moment, a humorous moment. And that's what we did. And that's how we survived Auschwitz, he said. So humor and happiness did get us out of Auschwitz, did help us survive, he said. And one more beautiful thing I remember, Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. He writes something beautiful. The door to happiness opens outward. It opens outward because happiness is from inside. You don't find happiness, again, it's not a destination. Happiness comes from the inside out. And that, again, going back to reiterate the point, that is when we connect it to the divine, to the conduit, to the Rebbe. And when, to reiterate the story, when your ego covers that over and you don't allow the ich to be connected with the anoichi, the I, with the Rebbe, which is bittul. When you're bittul, you're connected to the anoichi, the I, the Rebbe I. That's when you feel unhappy. And that's why the Alter Rebbe starts that it's humility that allows that transmission of that energy of that creates that inner happiness. And before we go a little bit into the leap year, I want to share something else. The story of the Jewish people is Misha Nichnas Adar Marbim Simcha. Think of every yontif. They try to destroy us. We survived. Now let's eat. Look at it, every yontif. Purim. They try to destroy us. We survived. Now we're going to eat hamantash and have a sudas purim. Look at Chanukah. They try to destroy us. We survived. We have latkalach. Pesach, zelbazach. They try to destroy us. We survived. We have a Pesach Seder, matzah, marar, charaisis, you name it. Always tied in with simcha, meals and food. Because this is the Jewish response to tragedy. This is the Jewish response to persecution. We make fun, we laugh, we celebrate, and we eat. This is how we respond to pain, to sorrow, and to darkness. We celebrate. Now I want to share a little bit about leap year, and then hopefully bring it all together, if I have a few more minutes. So everybody here knows what a leap year, a Shana Muberes, a pregnant year. Very quickly, the Yidden were leaving Mitzrayim. The Rebbe gave them the first mitzvah, Chodesh Hazel Lachem, make yourself a calendar, but not a solar calendar, a Gregorian calendar, a lunar calendar, a special calendar. The problem is the lunar calendar has less days than the solar calendar. The solar calendar defines the seasons, 365 days. So what do? It says in the Torah that Pesach must be in the spring. Sukkot has to be in the autumn. So we have to add another month. So we add Adar because it's right before Pesach. To compensate for the loss of days, to push Pesach into the correct season. So the Rebbe asks in a Sikha, why did we need the headache? Why not just give the Jews the solar calendar? Why do you have to make an adjustment every few years? And if you read about the Chachamim, the calculations they had to make, it was a very, very intense process. They didn't have computers in those days. So why do we need to have a leap year? What's the tachlis of a leap year? So the Rebbe says something very, very fascinating. That the leap year comes every few years so that we can rectify what happened at the beginning of time. What happened at the beginning of time? We all learned this in school, very fascinating medrash. The Rebbe created the moon and the sun, equal light, equal power. The moon was jealous. The moon comes to the Rebbe and says, you can't have two kings on one throne. It just doesn't work. Rebbe says to the moon, oh, you can't have two kings on one throne? I'll diminish your light. And so the moon's light became diminished. The jealousy of the moon caused the diminishment of its light. So what happens? There's a negative energy in the ear. Now, the Jewish people and mankind from beginning, before we were the Yidden, inherited that energy, the negativity of the moon, because we are like the moon. You know, we wax, we wane, all the different reasons. And that led to Chet Eitz Adar, says the Rebbe. That led Adam and Chava to also question, yeah, maybe the Rebbe doesn't want us to be smarty pantses, so we can't eat from the tree. The competition will be fierce, so they eat from the tree. Comes the leap year, says the Rebbe. What happens? The moon and the sun are now in synergy again. They're equal again. We're given the supernatural koyach of rectifying the sin of the moon and the Chet Eitz Adar. Based on what? Because the Zohar says, Yisrael v'Kutzebrecha kulam chad. The Jewish people and God are one. And if we're one, with the infinite, we have infinite power to transform nature. That's the koyach of adding the month. We create the leap year. So now we restore the moon to its former glory. We heal the chatayim of yesteryear. But even more so, this leap year energy allows us to not only repair the sins of old, to repair the transgressions that come over time. That's the power of the leap year. So that Eibishter, by giving us the power to create a leap year and realign the sun and the moon to its former glory, so to speak, gave us the energy into the world to be able to always rectify the chatayim, or the transgressions that happen in our lives. So all of you heard of Chelm, right? They were actually very smart people. So there's two guys in Chelm. They look up in the sky and one says to the other, you see the moon, isn't it beautiful? He says, what are you talking about? That's not the moon, that's the sun. He says, I'm telling you it's the moon. The other guy says, no, I'm telling you it's the sun. And a whole argument breaks out. And they're arguing. And they can't, no one wants to budge. They see a fellow in the distance. They say, we're going to call him over. He's going to resolve it. They call him over. They go, sir, can you look up at the sky? Is that the sun, like I say? Or is it the moon, like my friend says? The guy looks up. He says, you know, gentlemen, I really can't help you because I'm not from around here. I'm not from the neighborhood. So I want to share one more shtickle on the leap year, and then I want to bring it all together. The Rebbe says another beautiful thing about the leap year. That we know that everything in the Ruchnizdika world, in the spiritual realms, has a physical counterpart. Everything is connected. So we have the sun. What's the sun? The light never changes. The power of the sun never changes. The same sun day in and day out. What about the moon? The moon, not one day is the same like the next day. It waxes, it wanes, it's a sliver, it's a full moon, it's a disappearing moon. You never know what's going to be with the moon. That's where lunacy came from. He's a lunatic, like the moon, you know, when there's a full moon. So the Rebbe says the sun and the moon reflect our reality. What's our reality? The sun is the Torah, the anchor of life, the foundation. It never, ever changes. It's l'olam va'ed. From generation to generation, it's the same Torah. But within the Torah, the rules of the Torah, with the strength of Messiah from Sinai, from Matan Torah, the Chachamim, who defined the laws for us. In every generation, the new Chachamim, the new Rabbanim, the new Gedolim can build on the Messiah of the previous generations to bring forth innovation and creativity in different areas of Torah, mitzvahs, and halacha. That's the power of the moon. What does this mean? For example, in the olden days, somebody died, they died. Nebuch, they died. Now, there's so much life support. They can literally keep a person alive. They have kidney machines and heart machines and brain machines, every machine you can imagine. So all questions of pulling plugs, it's a very, very serious situation going on. So what do the Rabbanim do? They build on the knowledge of the previous Chachamim and Gedolim and come forth with solutions, what to do in all halachic instances. That's the power of the moon. The innovation, the creativity, building on the foundation of the sun. Or fertility questions. In the olden days, you were told, Nebuch, couple couldn't have children, you couldn't have children. Now, Baruch Hashem, new breakthroughs in medicine and science, but you need halacha. What are you permitted to do? What are you not permitted to do? That's the power of the moon. Building on the foundation of Torah. Or even in a marriage. A marriage has to be built on trust, commitment, loyalty. You don't have that, you don't have a marriage. But does it mean your marriage should be boring and dull? You have to bring passion, joy, excitement. You have to bring the lunar energy. You can't allow it to become stale. But you have to have foundations. You have to have a foundation. So the Rebbe says the leap year shows us how the integration of the sun and the moon, every few years we are reminded of how important it is to synchronize the two. To have that synergy between the sun and the moon. So now let's bring it together. First, I thought to myself, you don't need a connection. The Alter Rebbe talks about Simcha, very nice. The concept of the leap year, very nice. But then I saw one more thing from the Rebbe, and I think this really ties in beautifully. The Rebbe says, what's the power of the 2 months? 30 days and 30 days? 60 days. 60. Where do you read about 60? In Halacha, in the Shulchan Aruch, Batel B'Shishim. So what happens? You're making a delicious stew for the mishpacha, and you're drinking your hot coffee with milk, and you lean over to give a mix, and in splashes the milk from the coffee. So what do? Is it treif for your beautiful stew? Is it treif? So halacha says, if there's 60% more, it nullifies the milk. It's not treif. It's batel b'shishim. It's nullified, Baruch Hashem. So comes the leap year, comes the shishim. Many times we have negative energy inside. We're unhappy, we're depressed, we're pulled down. So on a personal level, shishim, the leap year, helps us transform the negativity to positivity, the darkness to light. And also in the global situation, we're facing wars now and darkness and pain and a real gullus now. Everyone in the hate of the Yidden is coming out from every woodwork, every crack and crevice in the world. So this is the koyach of the double Adar. That the darkness, the gullus, the negativity should be transformed, batel b'shishim, and we should see the Gila Amitzis Hashlemis Al Yidei Mashiach. Let it already be now, now, now. We can't say it stronger now. Thank you very much.